John, Clint, so nice to talk to you guys. Before we get too deep into things, it'd be good to just start with your influences. So tell me about the world and how this idea came to you.
The initial thing was just sitting down and plotting out, I want to make a fairy tale because I've never really tackled that before. I've always loved fantasy, always loved sci-fi, but I just wanted to do a fairy tale with some sort of troll ogre creature at the end. My influences were certainly Robert Eggers' The Witch, just in terms of the atmosphere. I had actually just watched Troll Hunter before I made this, and that kind of brings out the slightly goofier side of the fairy tale. I think that seeps in there a little bit with the way the father exaggerates the stories about the wretched roamer. I definitely wanted to set out and do something unique with this, which is why we end up in an atemporal place and time. We have props from modern times that are rusted, and I just wanted to do something that felt kind of fresh.
It's interesting you bring up the witch, and might say the witch has a bit of a different father-daughter dynamic to Dwindle. I think you would agree. Where did that father-daughter dynamic come from? Why was it about this story that you thought that would be appropriate for it?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you there. I feel like oftentimes when I write a story, the setting, the environment kind of comes first, and then I discover the relationships that make sense within that world. And I knew that this was destined to be about stories being passed down from generation to a younger generation. And so it was always going to be a parent-child relationship of some sort. It felt like it was well suited to the task.
If we get more into the story of the daughter, is there more that her father has to teach her? Are there other experiences that you may have wanted to expand upon in another movie?
Not that I've directly thought about yet, though I've written a few ideas for larger stories. Many of them involve expanding on the idea of the Wanderer character and the sort of desperate, almost animalistic violence that humans are capable of. I would like to visit that a lot more because that character served a very important purpose, but his role is very, very short in the story. And it allows us to kind of study the weird dual nature of humanity where we have this bright hope for the future, but also there's something holding us back, this almost primal need for violence that many people adhere to. And that's what I would want to dive into more with an expanded story, as well as maybe some more fun creatures.
Clint, I'm wondering how you brought your own experience as a father into it. Do you ever find yourself kind of thinking like, oh, that's something Dominic would say? You kind of feel as if you hear his voice when you're in dad mode sometimes?
Oh, sure. Sure, that's a great question. I think we can mirror each other. And when I get a question or I want to impart some wisdom, I can feel him coming through a little bit. And I try not to speak in his dialect when I'm saying something. But there's some crossover between us. And I get what you mean. I would agree.
John, what were some of the difficulties in filming in such an arduous location?
Yeah, we got snowed out 3 of our weekends because we actually shot it in March of last year, which we're up at like 8,000 feet elevation. So a snowstorm just made the whole area completely unusable. And then one of the days we were shooting, the snow was still melting. So pushing the camera carts through the mud was an ordeal. And fortunately, there's road access near to where we were shooting. So no one had to walk that far. But even so, a 200 yard from the gravel road to our shooting location gets to be a big deal when you're going back and forth, and your crew is so small. So everyone's lifting as much as they can, armfuls of stuff. I'm walking around with a full monster on my shoulders, walking through the woods from the road. But, we had a great team that came together, and everyone was willing to pull their weight.
Clint, just the way you played this sort of wise, old, paranoid man who his just visions and his explanations to his daughter turned out to be true. How did you perfect that character? Because there's so many layers to a character like that.
John really helped me get there, for sure. I brought my own experience by being a father myself and how I would protect my daughter and educate her and warn her. But John really helped me get there, I would say. He helped me prepare. He explained. He was prepared himself to really talk to me about this world and this character and his daughter.
Clint, when you first laid your eyes on this massive prop, was it easier to kind of get in character for that particular scene when getting an idea of what you're going to be facing against or up against?
It was definitely when I was facing him and having him move, it was unsettling. Although the face is sympathetic, it was still quite alarming to be interacting with something so large. So it really helped me get into character rather than just staring at like a green ball.
And looking at the end of the film where you see the Six Circle members kind of maneuvering the creature, how heavy was the Wretched Roamer prop?
About 100 pounds altogether, which isn't that bad for his size, really. But he was a little bit unwieldy. His head would loll to the side quite a bit. So I want to say that was our 7th or 8th full take that we ended up using.
Besides location and acting and everything else that goes on with this film, a word I'd like to use for this film is captivating. As a person who wasn't too familiar, with the fantasy genres and sci-fi genres, this film really captivated me, had me on my toes, and like I just wanted more. I was when it was over, I was like, oh, well, I want more. So do you think there will be a part 2 to Dwindle?
I've thought about that a little bit. I would love the opportunity to enlarge the story into a feature or a series of some sort. At the budget level at which I work, it's a challenge to think about expanding that. But I still have the puppet. I'm very open to expanding that story because I feel like it's a world in which a very large story could easily be told. And I would love that.
Thank you so much, James and William, for those great questions. Clint, what do you prefer to do as an actor? Live, stage, TV, or film?
I think I prefer film. I haven't done stage, I haven't done theater, but film just feels like I can get more of a story under my belt. Whereas a TV show, I feel like I'm in and out really quickly unless I'm a main character, which doesn't happen very often. But with a film, I can feel like I'm a main character. I feel like an important part of the story, even on larger budget things. So that's what I prefer and I like a lot.
We're guessing that the lenses were opaque. You could not see through them.
I could not. I could see a little bit when it was daylight, but when it was dark, I couldn't see anything. So it did help with pretending to be blind, actually having limited vision. I didn't have the experience of having limited vision like that. So it's one less thing to pretend. So I could focus on other factors and other things that were important.
And what of the other senses do you think kicked in the most, knowing that your sight was limited? And what did you rely on?
Hearing especially, but also just being careful with where I'm stepping, what I'm touching. But I would say hearing mostly, especially with my on-screen daughter, hearing where she is. She has to stay close to me to help guide me. But the senses for sure would be hearing.
And how much time did you spend in makeup and or wardrobe in your character? And can you speak for your co-star who played your daughter, Maria?
I would say less than an hour because we really had to get going and start filming, especially when it was nighttime. So sometimes there was a team of makeup artists there, and sometimes it was just one person. But we got going within the hour and we got used to what we had to do, and the crew did too.
John, did you have any primary thematic concerns when you approached this visual style for your film?
The thematic concerns certainly evolved over the course of writing, and some of these continued to be added even once we were very near to production. But ultimately, I wanted to feel the sense in which culturally we tell stories for reasons that become unknown to later generations. And so there's a crumbling of society, there's a loss of older generations. That's why I wanted the world that exists outside of this forest to be very vague and atemporal. Is this our world in the future? Is this the past? We're not sure, because whatever it is, it's over and we're moving on. And all that's left is these stories. And that's the theme that I wanted to be ever present. It's just a feeling of being unmoored from any concrete society and civilization that we can kind of stick our flag in and say, okay, we're safe here. No, we're out in the deep end now. We don't know what the world is. All we have is these stories. So we can't be sure what's real and what's not. And that's what drove everything. Storyboards to wardrobes to set pieces to the Wretched Roamer.
And you touched on this a little bit with our hosts, but can you just walk us through any more significant changes that were made from the script to the final film?
A late addition, actually, something that kept going back and forth was the character of the Wanderer and how he fit into things. Because I knew early on that the character of Liz, the daughter, was going to need to have a battle of her own. While her father is confronting this wretched roamer that is turning out to be real for him, she needed to have a journey of her own. And initially, it was a very different confrontation with the Wanderer. She did not end his life. And the sort of reality shift that happens at the end once the father ceases to exist, I had the Wanderer sort of become this character in her life who's traveling with her now. As if her father wasn't there, then maybe she met this guy earlier and they're getting off on the right foot. They're traveling together. And I found that it was a little too convoluted for the length of the story that we were telling. And I decided ultimately just to show an escalation of this violence, essentially, a sort of loss of innocence for Liz in a way that signals her transition to adulthood and being able to survive on her own. And that was kind of the last thing that was thrown in was the bashing of the Wanderer was one of the last additions that happened. Otherwise, once that change was made, the final film reflects the script pretty closely.
What are you most proud of in this film?
What I'm most proud of is a friend of mine watched the film and he gave me the best compliment I could have gotten, which is that I was able to make a 12-foot puppet made out of wood and latex into like this transformative ethereal experience, and there's gravity to it. It doesn't feel silly, and that's what I'm most proud of, that this monster movie could have easily become like very, very silly if not handled correctly, and it being able to pull that off in a dramatic, hopefully thrilling fashion, that's what I'm excessively proud of doing that.
Clint?
I would say I'm most proud of my work on it because I took it very seriously. I did try to enjoy myself and be playful, of course, but it was a serious project for me and a serious story. And as far as I know, I pleased the director, and that's so important to me because that doesn't always happen. So as far as I know, John appreciated my work, and that's all I can ask for, and that's what I'm most proud of.
Very much so.
All right, for our final question, what have you learned about yourself through the making of this film?
I would say I learned to really trust a team, trust others in the process and my collaborators. I trust my scene partner first, and I trust the director, and then everyone took it so seriously. So I didn't have a fear of not being taken care of, not being uncomfortable, and not, as John said, making something silly. That wasn't the intention. So that's what I learned, is to trust.
John?
I think trust is a good answer for me too. Yeah, trusting my coworkers, my wonderful director of photography, Giannis, trusting the cast, and in a big way, trusting myself too, because it's easy to self-limit, especially working with no budget indie film stuff. It's easy to think this is just a crazy idea. Why try to make this happen? But I think when you work on enough projects and get a good enough team, you get to the point where you can say, no, this came out of my head and I can do what artists do, and we can make this happen. We can make this real. And with every project, I learn more and more just how joyful an experience that is. So I guess that's my answer.